Hi everyone, welcome back to MOHIvate. I'm Dr. Mohi Sarawgee, a GP by profession, but here I'm swapping prescriptions for perspective. Today we are talking about something humans have been trying to figure out since we realized mangoes don't last forever. Longevity. Not just living longer, but living well. Not just adding years to life, but adding life to those years. These days, longevity has officially gone from lab to lifestyle. So let's begin. We humans have never been very good at accepting our own expiry date. In ancient China, emperors chased the elixir of immortality. They drank potions made with cinnabar, not realizing it's basically mercury. Not the planet Mercury, we've all just survived that retrograde, but the chemical. So instead of living forever, they died fairly quickly and probably very shiny. In ancient India, Ayurveda spoke of rasayan, rejuvenation therapies meant to restore youth, intellect, strength, and longevity. They didn't have spirulina shots or mushroom coffee, but they deeply understood rhythms, digestion, herbs, seasons, and connection. And of course, in Greek mythology, we met Tithonus, the man who asked the gods for eternal life but forgot to ask for eternal youth. So he lived forever but kept aging, shrinking, degenerating until he was just a disembodied voice begging for death. The original case of immortality without health span. Even our stories try to warn us. And yet, here we are in 2025, no cinnabar, but lots of NMN and glutathione capsules. No mythological gods, but very real venture capitalists. No rasayan therapies, but plenty of cellular detox packages. Different language, same longing, more time. Silicon Valley founders are running plasma transfusions and gene therapy fantasies. IV drips are turning up at brunches and living room wellness gatherings. And honestly, it's not just the women, it's the men too. Dinner conversations now include sentences like, I'm focusing on my epigenetic age this quarter. And somewhere in all of this, many of us are quietly wondering, am I doing enough? Do I need a longevity clinic? Or are sleep and vegetables still a thing? So today, we are going to gently walk through the new buzzword medicines you keep hearing about, what the science actually says about aging so far, and the hype, money, and Californian dreams behind the modern immortality industry. And towards the end, we'll bring it back to you. What actually matters, what you can realistically do now, and how to think about all of this without needing a billionaire, a biotech lab, or a drip standing in your living room. So take a breath. This is an important conversation because at some point you may find yourself wondering if you should sign up for something that promises you extra decades. And even for us as doctors, it can feel overwhelming to answer those questions, to sift through the science, the marketing, and the hope. So, whether you're on your commute, folding your laundry, or just taking a moment to exhale, this space is for you. First, let's quickly decode some of the words we keep hearing. Longevity medicine is the headline grabber. Think clinics that focus on early risk assessments, advanced fitness markers, detailed blood panels, continuous glucose monitors, and strategies to delay or prevent the big killers heart disease, cancer, dementia, and type 2 diabetes. Its aim is to maximize health span, the years you live well, not just how long you exist. At its best, it's proactive and preventative. At its worst, it can become an expensive sport for the already healthy. Next is precision medicine. Its basic message is you're not a guideline, you're a person. It uses genetics and genomics, detailed lab markers, sometimes microbiome, imaging, wearables to personalize care. At its best, it says it aims to give the right treatment at the right time to the right person. At its worst, It can become an excuse to order every possible test just in case and then not quite know what to do with the data. Then comes functional medicine, which asks what's the root cause. It looks at gut, hormones, immune system, and lifestyle as interconnected, even using complementary and conventional approaches. At its best, it reminds us that symptoms live in systems. At its worst, it can drift into over testing, over supplementing, and sometimes stepping a little too far away from solid evidence. And finally, lifestyle medicine, the quietly powerful one. Lifestyle medicine says before we add pills, can we gently fix the foundations? It focuses on sunlight and time outdoors, movement, nutrition, stress and emotional health, sleep, relationships, purpose and community, and yes, substance abuse. It may not seem glamorous because there's no futuristic console, but this is where the strongest evidence lies right now for preventing chronic disease. So, longevity, precision, functional, lifestyle, none of these are nonsense words, but they can be used in two very different ways as real tools to improve health and prevent disease, or as branding wrapped in glitter to sell you things you may not actually need. My job today is to help tell the difference, and our job together is to understand these ideas, be aware of the trade offs, and make mindful decisions. That's why this conversation is necessary. Now, let's step away from wellness marketing and talk about science. Scientists describe aging using the hallmarks of aging, different kinds of damage and decline that build up over time. I'm going to use a few big words, but only ones you already hear on podcasts, news, and in articles. You don't need to memorize them, just recognize them. They include things like DNA damage and mutations, which means the instruction manual gets smudged, telomere shortening, the little caps at the ends of chromosomes wearing down. Then, epigenetic drift, your genetic software settings slowly going wonky. Mitochondrial dysfunction, those little cellular batteries misfiring. Senescent cells, zombie cells that don't die but don't work and secrete inflammatory signals. Stem cell exhaustion, the body's repair system getting tired. To put it simply, aging is slow, organized chaos. It's not one master switch we can turn off. It's lots of tiny processes slowly wearing out together. Fast forward to the Enlightenment era, and we have people like Benjamin Franklin, who apparently said he wished he could be preserved in a wine barrel and woken up 200 years later to see the future of science. If he were alive today, he'd probably be asking to be stored in a cryo lab in California with a Wi Fi enabled brain chip. Cool? Creepy? Maybe a little bit of both. Now, if you've ever Googled longevity, you've probably met the usual big names, not to worship or cancel anyone, but simply to understand the landscape. Let's start with Dr. Peter Attia, author of the book Outlive, which became a modern longevity handbook. He talks about the four horsemen of chronic disease: atherosclerotic disease, cancer, neurodegenerative disease like Alzheimer's, metabolic disease, which is insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver, etc. He focuses heavily on strength and muscle mass, metabolic health, early screening, cardiorespiratory fitness, and emotional health. At his best, he's a powerful voice for prevention. But he also understandably draws criticism as his model of care can be expensive and resource heavy. Some of the screening he suggests goes beyond current guideline evidence, and for many people, his approach might feel like a full time job of optimizing. On the other end of the spectrum is Dr. Venki Ramakrishnan, Nobel Prize winning biologist and author of Why We Die. He steps back and asks the bigger questions. What is aging biologically? What can science realistically do? And crucially, what happens ethically if we push too far? He describes aging as accumulated damage plus imperfect repair, not a neat program we can switch off. And he's very clear we are nowhere near curing aging in humans. He also raises questions more of us should be asking. Even if we live to 130 or 150, who would get that life? What happens to fairness, generational turnover, power? Would it be ethical to alter future generations? Could death become a privilege of the poor? Dr. Venki even half jokingly calls some in this world immortality merchants, scientists or entrepreneurs promising dramatically extended life, usually backed by people who quite literally don't want the party to end. And honestly, a small part of me hoped a Nobel Prize winning biologist might reveal some secret, glamorous new trick up his sleeve. But no, his conclusions land somewhere very familiar: sleep, nutrition, movement, connection, managing the basics. Not as glamorous as a cold plunge with celebrity microbes, but far more powerful. Then there are others in the longevity orbit: David Sinclair, Aubrey de Grey, futurists, biotech founders using AI to hunt for age related drugs. Some visionary, some controversial, all interesting. Tech founders are major funders of longevity research, some chasing longevity escape velocity. The idea that if we extend life by 1 year every year, we might outrun aging altogether. Bold? Yes. Visionary? Sure. But let's be honest, also a little science fiction. You don't need to remember every name because the point is this: this field is part real science, part real hope, and part very shiny hype. And my takeaway after following all of them is that while they disagree on how far we can push lifespan, they quietly agree on one thing: the foundations don't change. Sleep, movement, food, connection, basic risk factor management, all the unglamorous stuff. And our job as thoughtful humans is not to worship or reject any one figure, but to keep asking, what's the actual evidence? Who benefits? Is this scalable or only for the wealthy? And what am I neglecting while I chase this protocol or pill? That's the mindset I'd love for you to hold as we go on. Now, let's talk about research because Instagram uses that word very creatively. Real longevity research usually starts in cells and animals. It moves to small human trials, and if those go well, it grows into large controlled studies and then maybe becomes guideline level advice. This takes years to decades. Most ideas fail. But being cautious is not negativity, it's good science. Hype often does this instead. It finds an interesting result in mice, skips straight to human optimization protocol on social media, adds words like clinically proven, biohacking, cellular rejuvenation, offers a supplement, expensive blood panel, or membership program. It also regularly confuses correlation, which means people who have higher X live longer, with intervention, which means if you take X, you will live longer. Add money, influence, and fear of aging on top, and you have the perfect recipe for overwhelm. No wonder so many people think if I'm not cold plunging, red lighting, fasting, blocking blue light, I'm failing at health. As a GP, I also see the other side. People so anxious about biomarkers that they can't sleep. People spending on exotic tests while skipping basic medication or routine checkups. People feeling ashamed because they can't live like influencers with home labs and chefs. Let's also acknowledge the molecules you hear about constantly: NMN, NR, resveratrol, spermidine, rapamycin, NAD boosters, and even metformin, now rebranded for longevity through the TAME trial. Many come from real science, but most human evidence is early, mixed, or limited. Before you put your money and your hope into a capsule or clinic, please make sure you know what we actually know, not just what the marketing implies. These are experimental layers, not replacements for foundations. We'll do a full New Age supplements episode another day, and I'm sure you'll enjoy that too. So let's simplify. If I offered you 10 extra years of life, but you were frail and exhausted, and you spend those years chasing numbers instead of memories, is that really a win? Across this field, be it among any group of experts, there's a quiet agreement on a few truths. Health span matters more than lifespan. Lifestyle is still the strongest longevity drug we have. Supplements are additions, not foundations. Equity matters because postcode and income still predict aging more than any molecule. And hope is allowed, but humility is wise. Because lifestyle medicine plays such a central role, I too trained separately in prescribing lifestyle medicine, and it deeply shaped how I practice. Because we don't just treat disease, we treat patterns, habits, systems, stories, emotions. Since then, I've tried to prescribe lifestyle not as a lecture but as a partnership, focusing on the core pillars we know genuinely move the needle: sunlight, nutrition, movement, sleep, emotional well being, and connection. Simple? Yes. Easy? No. Powerful? Absolutely. So, if you take one thing from today, let it be this: wherever you are in the world, somewhere between work, family, and a slightly guilty gym membership, you don't have to live to 150 to have a meaningful life. You're allowed to opt out of the longevity race. You're allowed to care more about how you feel at 7 p.m. today than about your methylation age in 2050. You're allowed to choose deep, sustainable habits over frantic optimization. Aging is not just molecular decay, it's also wisdom, perspective, emotional richness, deeper relationships, softer thinking, sharper knowing. So instead of overwhelming you with another list of sleep, food, movement, you've already had enough of those today. Let me offer something more practical. Your personal longevity prescription might look like this: going for a brisk walk most days, a bit of strength work so future you can get off the floor unaided, protecting your sleep like it's a medical appointment, eating food your grandmother would recognize, keeping some thread of connection with people you love, doing something that lights your brain up, reading, music, learning, and letting yourself rest without guilt. These are not consolation prizes. These are the very things that change risk curves in real studies, and they also make life feel more lifelike. You're allowed to be curious about the future of medicine and still root your daily life in the basics that make you feel human now. Because in modern medicine, whatever buzzy label we put on it, the aim is the same: reduce suffering, preserve function, and enhance meaning. Maybe one day we'll have dependable age reversal therapies. But today, real longevity is built from the small, steady things you do for yourself, the simple foundations, the habits that carry you, and the choices that honor you. I hope something today stirred a thought, gave you a smile, or simply made you pause. Whatever time it is where you are, I hope you carry a little feel good factor with you. Thank you for listening. I'm Dr. Mohi. Until next time, stay motivated. May your choices feel sustainable, your routines feel nurturing, and may your life, in all its beautiful imperfections, feel like coming home to yourself again and again.